One of the top search terms on YouTube, why is the Bible so confusing? I understand. It definitely can be, but I'm going to explain maybe some of the ways why it confuses people. And I think doing that will be able to understand a better way to not be as confused by the Bible. So, um, first point is that there are different literary genres. It's not all the same. It shouldn't all be read the same. Um, and there's even the Gospels and the the Book of Acts are the Gospels and the Book of Acts are written more as um, biographies or literal telling of events, whereas something like Psalms is poetic. Psalms has it talks about David. Um, I forget the exact quote. Basically, he said that he's crying and his tears are so much that his bed swims with his tears. So obviously, no, he didn't literally cry so much that his bed is like floating around his room, but you get the implication there that he's crying a lot. He's probably really sad. So then there's books like Revelation, which is apocalyptic in genre, and that needs to be taken into account. There's a lot of language there that is could be hyperbolic. It could be possibly some metaphor talking about, beasts and number of heads and having crowns on the head and stuff like that. Could be, a conglomerate of nations. It could be a lot of different stuff. And those um, specifically like Revelation is I don't remember if I said Revelations or Revelation before, but there's no S on it, and it bothers me when people do that. So I may have done that. If I did, I apologize. Um, but there is some debate on kind of how to read Revelation, and that kind of goes into your end time view and what you think is going to happen. And yeah, but it's important to know the literary genre of the book that you're reading. There's prophecy, which I think is really cool, and not I I like fulfilled prophecy a lot more than I like unfulfilled prophecy because I think fulfilled prophecy is actually good evidence that the Bible is accurate. And yeah, so prophecy is another type that's in there, and then letters, which would be similar to if you're writing a letter to somebody. Um, yeah, so the know the genre of the book that you're reading. Um, it could be a good idea. I'd say when you start reading a book, um, before you start it, figure out what genre it is, and then take that into account when you're reading through. I think that helps you to kind of process and understand what you're reading a little bit better. You're not going to read, like I said, you're not going to read the Gospel of John the same way that you read Revelation. So, yeah. Next point is the cultural and historical context. Let's look at context. Why is understanding the context so important? So, one verse that is frequently taken out of context. We will look at. Here we go. Good old Bible Gateway. Matthew 7:1. Judge not that you be not judged. Um, that sounds pretty good. Um, but here is the issue. You're not understanding it in context. A lot of people use this to say, hey, the Bible says you can't judge other people. You're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. But if we read it, in context, let's look at verse 1 through 5. Judge not, that ye not be judged. I said ye. Wow. You not be judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So, if we're looking at this in context, we see this is not saying don't judge people. This is saying make sure you've got your house in order before you go trying to judge people. We're actually told that we need to judge people. We're told we need to judge the fruit of people. We need to judge leaders that are above us and make sure that um, they are bearing good fruit, that they are doing things as they're supposed to be doing them. We're told to judge prophecy and prophets and things like this. So the idea that you shouldn't judge people is not a biblical idea at all, really. Um, Again, kind of on that same point of the cultural and historical context, I think something that would be good is to find some good study tools and resources. There are some I recommend. First one, I think it'd be pretty accessible to most people, is good Bible teachers. Um, you can find a lot of good Bible teachers in a lot of different places. I will a few that I think are really exemplary, I will recommend, and these you can find uh, on YouTube pretty easily. All three, I've got three recommendations, and then I know at least one of them you can find elsewhere. Two of them you can find elsewhere. I'm not sure about the third, but YouTube's a great spot for them. And yeah, so the first one is Mike Winger. I know he has come under some scrutiny recently, completely uncalled for, because of a series he did on women in ministry, where he was extremely thorough and he talks through this. But I give, I'll say this, I give blanket endorsements to all three that I'm going to bring up today, not because I think they're always right, not because I always agree with them, but because I know that they are approaching this with humility, that their goal is to teach people, to help them think more, or think biblically. That's Mike Winger's tag, really, is helping people think biblically. Think biblically, but helping people to think through some of these questions and things like that, and understand what they're reading, and understand different topics and things like that. And so um, I also will say that all of them have a degree of humility that they don't have an issue being wrong. They will point out when they're wrong. And I've seen Mike do this actually in a live. Someone had asked him about a verse, and he thought he had the answer. He went back and looked. He found out he was wrong. Like he was just wrong on this, and he apologized live on the stream that he had misunderstood this, and he had been teaching this wrong for years. And it was, I mean, it was a fairly simple thing, but that is a level of humility that I think um, more people need to have. Mike Winger is the first one. Trinity Radio is the second one. They are really good channel, and they kind of do casual learning. It's mainly Braxton Hunter. Jonathan Pritchett will be on there occasionally as well. Braxton is the president of Trinity Seminary and School of the Bible, and I believe Jonathan is a professor there as well. But they do a really good job. They're really smart. Uh, way beyond where I am and probably will ever be. But they do a really good job of relating the stuff down to the typical layman and a lot of these things, which is, and Mike does that too. So that's something that I think some scholarly people have some issue with. And then the third one I will bring up is Remnant Radio. They are, again, there's three of them: Joshua Lewis, Michael Roundtree, and Michael Miller. and they're solid. They're all three pastors. They're all three charismatics. They believe the gifts of the Spirit for today, and they're very cautious with it. They put the guardrails in place that we have in Scripture, and they do a really really good job of digging into a lot of the topics like that and exegeting it live. So find good teachers, good Bible teachers. Commentaries are good as well. I really have started liking commentaries from like early church fathers. Um, so I'm he's not really an early church father, but I've actually gotten a commentary on Galatians from Martin Luther, and I've used that a little bit in the Fruit of Spirit series that I'm going to be having come up. Commentary is good as well. Besides that, Logos Bible software is phenomenal. I'm hoping to do something before too much longer and actually like give show like practically using it, show people how they can go about doing it. So Logos Bible software, and then Blue Letter Bible is free as well. It's online, and they have some great resources. I've used them before live, showing people. But they have, you can pull up a verse. One of my favorite features with them, you can pull up a verse and you can actually pull up an interlinear, so it'll show you the English, and then below it the original, either Greek or Hebrew, and you can actually see specifically what word was translated to what word. And so if you're doing a deep dive, it makes it's very beneficial. BlueLetterBible.org, I believe it is, and it's absolutely free. If you're able to, I would recommend supporting them too, just to keep them going and keep them free, because they are worth it. Next thing on what can make the Bible confusing is I forgot what video we're doing for a second. Next thing is translation challenges. So my best advice for this is don't stick with just one translation. I do have a video that's kind of going over my top translations, but I recommend using a couple. Get a good like word for word translation. So like a NASB, ESV is a pretty decent one as well. I like the ESV. It's usually my go to. I just like how it reads. Um, but besides that, get something that's kind of a more of a thought for thought translation as well. So this would be like honestly, NIV is a really good thought for thought. It's kind of a good balance between the word for word and the thought for thought. And I used to hate on the NIV quite a bit, and after I've gotten into looking at different translations and things like that, I've gotten a lot more respect for the NIV. So use multiple translations. Find a couple. Bigger thing is to find one that you can read and understand. That's more important uh, within context, I guess, or within some limits. There's some. Do not read the Passion translation. It's not a translation. It is. Don't read it. Uh, I have a couple copies, and the only reason I have them is to see how much they differ from the actual translations, and they're not good. There's some not good theology that is pushed into the text of the Passion, and it should not be read as a legitimate Bible, and should not be definitely should not be used from the pulpit. The Message, again, is not a translation; it's a paraphrase. But I will say Eugene Peterson, the guy that wrote the Message, um, he actually he he despised when pastors would use it from the pulpit. He said that's not what it's for. So find a translation, solid translation that is good, that you know how to read. I do have a video going over kind of my top five, so you can go check that out. It actually may not be out by the time this drops, but by the time you watch it, it may be out. If not, it should be out within about a week from this video dropping. So, yeah, use multiple translations. Next, the next thing that kind of can cause some confusion, theological diversity. So there are differences in theological views, and I would say a lot of these differences are in-house debates, so secondary, tertiary issues don't affect salvation. No matter where you stand on it, you're still a brother or sister. Um, yeah, but there can be some confusion there. I would just recommend like dig into some of these topics. Find one that interests you. Dig in and see what you believe. Listen to people on both sides. Um, go look at the scriptures. One of the best things you can do, listen to someone who holds position A. Listen to their evidence. Go to scripture. Read it. Do kind of a deep dive yourself and to be like, okay, does that seem like it makes sense? Is that logically following to get to the point that he's making? And then go to position B and do the same thing. Because a lot of times they'll have a lot of the same scripture and just interpret it differently. There are going to be some things that they bring up differently, different scriptures and stuff like that, and you can do it as well. But it's really beneficial with the ones that they both pull for evidence and kind of seeing how they interpret it and how they get to their different view. I don't think that should be a cause for confusion. It's a cause for good, being a good Berean and practicing good exegesis, getting in and studying on your own and not just trusting what someone else tells you, especially just some random YouTuber. Um, okay. Last, with that, I would suggest to engage with people of different beliefs. Not necessarily debate, but like talk to people. Um, if you know they believe differently than you, just ask them like, hey, this is how I get to this. What are your thoughts, or how would you answer this issue that I have with this view? I think this refutes the view that you hold. How would you answer that? And be open and have open conversation. Um, Last point is complex doctrine. I get this. This can be one, and this can sometimes discourage people from really wanting to study. But I do think there are times where complex doctrine, not presented correctly, can cause people to just kind of shy away from Christianity altogether. So we've got things like the doctrine of the Trinity, which I've covered fairly extensively on the channel. The doctrine of the Trinity is biblical, it is taught, it is logical, but that doesn't mean that it's always super easy to understand or articulate. But we are limited. We are finite human beings trying to describe an infinite God. So there's going to be some lack there. I don't think that should be surprising to anybody. It's I say if you can describe it perfectly, it's not God. It's point simple. If you can understand every aspect of it without issue, it is not God. Yeah, so Trinity can be one. Eschatology is just the study of end times. There's a common view among evangelicals, charismatic Pentecostal types is premillennial, which I don't find myself in. I lean more post millennial. And I'm not going to go into a ton of depth of what those are. Maybe at some point I'll do a video and kind of dissect it. Um, I'll actually I'll put a link in the description. Mike Winger has a really good breakdown. It was one of the first videos of his I saw. A really good breakdown of end times views. And if you're looking to get a taste of Mike Winger, I highly recommend this is a good one because it's such a complex topic. There are several dissenting views on it, and there's several dissenting views that are all within the family of Christianity, and I think it's a good one for people to view. And then another example of the last one is PSA, or penal substitutionary atonement. So this is the idea that Jesus took the death that we should have taken. Um, yeah. So I recommend on difficult topics like this, finding good teachers, pastors, or theologians to help kind of explain, walk you through, and then take what they're saying back to Scripture, compare it to people that have differing views, and see where you land. And on issues like this, they're complex, but they're not salvation affecting. So most of of these topics, no matter what you hold, you're still a Christian. And Christians don't need to be excommunicating each other over holding differing views like some of these.